So Australia made the news because they came out, and they're not the only ones that are working on this, but they successfully had created a biological computer. They might be like, what is a biological computer? Well, it's a machine that actually has living brain cells combined with technology, combined with electronics. There's like 800,000 neurons, like live brain cells that are grown in addition, actually hooked up to a computer chip. And it works. That's the crazy part. They actually taught this biological computer using human neurons, or using, I think it was a combination of humans and mice brain cells. But either way, the point is real brain cells combined with a computer, and they taught it to play Pong. Now you might go, 1960 called, like it wants its technology back. Yeah, at this stage, it's not like, whoa, like don't think your laptop's going to have a bioprocessor in it in 2028. That's not what's going to happen. That's not the point. But the fact of the matter is they literally grew human brain cells, connected it with this, and actually have a biological machine running. And what's really interesting is, so they send these electric signals to the neurons, tell them what's happening. And just like in a human, it learns and sends signals back. And it tries to accomplish to win, and it doesn't like to lose, and it adapts. And it got better over time at playing this game. So it actually they actually were able to create a biological machine that adapted and learned without any coding, just simply like you would program a human. Now, it is different than a computer. Okay. So, like I said, it's using real brain cells versus like a silicon chip and all that. You're not programming it. You're, teaching it. Hang on one second. I'm going to pause this and I'll be right. All right. And we're back. So it's actually, you're not programming anything. You're, in a sense you are, but it's different. You're not typing code in and then executing it. It's actually learning through experience. So yes, you're sending electronic circuits or, signals through the brain cells, and then they're, reacting to it and it's learning. But it's different fundamentally than how an electronic computer would work. It's not nearly as fast. It's not nearly as structured and rigid. So it's far less predictable, just like people, but it's extremely flexible and it adapts and learns. It is ridiculously energy efficient, and digging into how they actually have to keep the cells alive and the biologics they had to do and build around this thing to keep this set of neurons alive. Like, you don't plug it into a wall, because think about your body. You're not plugged into anything. We eat, we breathe, we do this stuff, and we run. And it actually works that way, which is just absolutely fascinating. But and it's highly, highly efficient, which is a major problem with traditional computing, in that traditional computers require a ton of power. It's a major problem with all these AI, is we're just sucking the energy out of the earth to try and keep them running. And this did not. Unlike a computer where what you're getting, though, it's unpredictable. So, it really truly is a fascinating breakthrough. And I was digging into it myself going, this is kind of nuts. Like, this is crazy. But like I said, you're not going to be buying the MacBook Mini Bio in 2026 or 2020. It's not, it wouldn't even make sense to do it that way. If you really think about it, like, who really wants to go to your computer and it's like raising your child? You're like, that's not what I wanted you to do. No, come on. And then over time, over 20 years, it finally can, do something. You know what I mean? It's not that. And it's very basic now, but the fact they successfully did it, like everything else, once you cross that line, then all of a sudden it just takes off and we start seeing things. And so the goal is to move people to these hybrid computers, because again, if you think about some of the issues we run into with AI and processors and computing, they can't think and adapt and learn like people do. So could this be an innovation breakthrough that helps us cross that boundary? Uh, my take on it is probably not the way, some of the researchers think. And I know I could probably, get into some heated arguments with people about that. But I don't, my personal take, and anybody who knows me knows my world, my personal take is we're not just biological material reacting to electronic stimuli and then, changing our neural pathways based on that. I think there's a lot more going on there. I don't think we're going to see that happening in a biological computer. Now, will it work radically different? Yeah. Will it fill in some of the gaps in a way that a traditional computer can't? Yeah, I firmly think so. But it's not quite going to get there. But there are people who are now concerned, like, oh my gosh, we're using human brain cells. Is this thing going to become conscious? Which to me, then I just end up going like, well, what even? How are you defining consciousness? And a lot of times that's met with like, well, it's circular reasoning. Well, you're conscious because you're conscious. Okay, it's going to open a bit of a door now that we're here because now people are already going, well, hang on, we're dealing with live biological material that is responding and reacting, and it is responsive and in some ways alive. So we need to have rules around this. We need to have regulations around it. How could this be misused? Now that it's thinking more like a person, could it be used to do things like better surveillance or hacking, or could it be weaponized? Which, of course, could things get out of hand with ethics? Of course, all these things are things that are now going to have to be examined and explored because we have successfully created a biological computer. And there's lots of players now who have already been, but will just now continue to learn from this development and want to get into the space. So it's going to be really, really interesting to see where it goes and how. But that's an interesting development when it comes to this. In terms of some of the things we might be able to see out of this, I think this could open up a lot of doors for cognitive research and understanding the human brain, some of the cognitive disorders that we often don't know a lot about or know how to cure could lead to some real development in things like that, ways to potentially regrow brain cells or, reverse cognitive disorders or cognitive damage, things like that. It could be used to help enhance AI. I think the implications on efficiency are huge. Now, granted, okay, but we got to be careful with this stuff. I mean, there's some real risks associated with it. We can't just ignore and we can't just go, sweet, biological computers. Let's just go for it and see what happens. And I'm sure it'll be fine. But it was a very exciting and fascinating breakthrough in terms of how they actually grew these brain cells, how they connected them up, and how they actually are teaching these well, first of all, just keeping them alive to me was like, this is so crazy that they're figuring out how to do all this. So it's an interesting step and leap forward in advancement, even though the advancement has led us to play, 1960s video games. But hey, it's fine. We all started somewhere, and that wasn't really that long ago in the larger landscape of time.